Living Local Carolina with Katie Turner. Local trends, shopping, dining, and more. This is Living Local Carolina.
Well, guys, welcome back to Living Local Carolina. I'm Katie Turner, and I'm in the studio with my friends from Beach Injury Lawyers, Will and Greg. Welcome back.
Good morning.
How are you?
I feel like it's been a minute, guys.
It has been a minute.
It has been.
We need to do some catching up. What have you guys been up to? What's new with you guys?
I just had shoulder surgery.
Ooh, yeah. Recovering nicely, I hope?
Yes.
Good,
I have hernia
good.
surgery coming up. We'll
Oh,
talk
gosh.
about our privacy rights later, so I'm letting everybody know that. Otherwise, it couldn't be told. I did want to tell everybody about a special. I know we've done it the last couple of shows, but we're doing an even better special for end of the year because we think it's the perfect time to get your affairs in order, things such as a will, living will. So we're doing a special. If you contact our office in the month of January and just have to book it in January and just say you saw us on WBTW on Living Local, then we're going to do a living will and a will for $200 for an individual and $400 for a couple.
Okay, sweet. And also we need to talk about dram shop liability. I've talked about this with you guys before, but this is especially relevant
have.
whenever we're going into holiday party season.
Well, it's not only that, but there was the reason we brought it up again was earlier this week, an intoxicated driver pled guilty to vehicular homicide. It was a case out of Charleston. It happened last year. I'm sure most people are familiar with it, but a bride and groom were leaving their reception at Folly Beach, and they left on a golf cart, and an intoxicated driver, a young lady, was traveling 65 miles per hour on a 25 mile per hour narrow road with a blood alcohol of about 2.26, which is it's about 3 times the legal limit. And she slammed into the golf cart, and she killed the bride instantly, and the groom suffered brain injury and a lot of other pretty serious injuries. So she pled guilty, and she received a sentence of 25 years. So having said that, but that's not the end of it, because the investigation showed that she was, the intoxicated driver had been bar hopping all day. And the different bars that she went, they were subject to dram shop liability. Okay, what's dram shop? Dram shop is simply an establishment that sells alcohol. It's an old English term. And a dram is a measurement of alcohol back from the 16th century. So that's why they call it dram shop and dram shop liability. So a business establishment is legally responsible for injuries that an intoxicated person causes. So this young lady, she had been bar hopping. She was intoxicated. Apparently she was clearly intoxicated, and yet the bars continued to serve her. And when she got into the car, she, of course, killed one and seriously injured, actually 2 others that were in the golf cart. So not only is the young lady going to serve 25 years, but the bars that
All of them?
overserved, there were 3 bars actually. So there was a wrongful death case was filed on behalf of the bride. And so a wrongful death claim was filed against the 3 bars and the allegation was they had overserved this particular driver. I know there was a settlement. I'm not exactly sure what the amount was. I'm sure it was a rather sizable amount based on the facts of the case. So it just shows that not only is there criminal responsibility, but there's also civil responsibility for bars that serve a person who either they should know or they do know is intoxicated, or if you overserve or serve a minor. So that's where dram shop liability comes in.
I see. Will, do you have any thoughts about this case specifically?
Well, I mean, we're going to be getting into this privacy aspects, and one of the things that was not helpful to the bride was, and I don't want to say if you're ever arrested to keep this in mind, but you're being recorded. So some of the conversations she had with her father was very damning evidence, and I think helped contribute, along with some previous, I believe, convictions or allegations of her, behavior in the past, led to the seriousness of the offense and the punishment she received. Yep.
And speaking of videotaping, that's what we're going to be talking about after the break, your rights and videotaping in public. So stick with us here on Living Local Carolina. Well, welcome back to Living Local, everyone. We're going to be talking about a new topic that we haven't talked about with Beach Injury Lawyers, videotaping people in public, which is something that I see in my line of work quite frequently and do.
Yep, I'm sure you do.
So what do you think that our viewers need to know?
Well, it's popular. My son showed me these, but he's a fan of these YouTubers who go into public areas. They'll go into a government office or a post office or whatever the case may be, and they'll start videotaping. And really, they're trying to get a rise out of people. They're trying to get the police called to see if the police will arrest them, and then in turn they sue the police for wrongful arrest. So a couple months ago, my daughter was in town, and we went down to the boardwalk area, and there was a guy that set up a camera, and he was videotaping. And I was amazed at how upset people were getting at this gentleman videotaping. People were confronting him. People were, telling him, you can't do that. You can't videotape me without my permission. You need my written consent and things of that nature, which that's wrong. That's wrong. So if you look around the boardwalk, there are a lot of cameras there already, whether it be from the city of Myrtle Beach or private businesses. So you're already being videotaped. So if you're in public, you do not have a right to, or an expectation of privacy, unless you're in a restroom or a dressing room or something of that nature. But if you're in public, then you can be videotaped because there is no expectation of privacy. And people think that you have to get consent, and there are certain instances, where consent is required. But in general, you can be videotaped in public.
Important to know when you're walking around here along the Grand Strand that you might be videotaped even when you don't know it. Well, what about for commercials?
Well, exactly. Now, if you're videotaping for commercial purposes, that could be you.
Yes, we have to get your written consent. You got to sign that dotted line before we can tape you.
And if somebody's out videotaping, again for commercial purpose, they're going to use a person's image or images for that commercial purpose, meaning they are trying to make money off that image. Then you have to get consent.
So what do you do if you get videotaped for a commercial purpose and you're like, I didn't sign anything?
Well, your remedy would be a lawsuit.
You go see the
I don't know the
lawyer.
value of your name, image, and likeness. I was just thinking how that's going to, in the future, probably become a little more complicated with college football
AI.
and collegiate sports. Your name, image, and likeness, and even YouTubers and these people who they utilize now their name, image, and likeness. And that's it's an interesting topic. But I was thinking about a story. I ran into Erin Andrews, the reporter for, I don't know who she's with now, Fox News, I think, or Fox Sports, but she was with ESPN when she was videotaped in her room. And I saw her the next week at the South Carolina-Tennessee game, and I couldn't get anywhere near her. I mean, she had bodyguards everywhere. And I'm taking a trip this Christmas, and I'd actually looked at a device on Amazon where you can detect and see if there's video cameras in the room. So those do exist. It's a real concern now.
Airbnbs especially. I know people are always checking and they'll show you like the typical places. It's creepy.
Yep. Yeah,
It's incredibly creepy.
Yeah.
But when you get to recording conversations.
Yeah, so in South Carolina, I think a lot of people have a misunderstanding or not a full understanding that in this state, all I have to do if I want to record a conversation is it's a one-party state. So if I know that I'm recording, I can call you and I can record our conversation. Now, I cannot record a conversation between Katie and Greg. Okay, so that's the difference. That would be, wiretapping if the police are involved.
I see.
But yeah, so
Okay.
that's the difference there, one party versus two party state. And I'm not sure what the majority of the country is, but we're a one party state. So.
And as a lawyer, we really can't do that. We cannot record conversations. Even though we know it, we know that it's being recorded, we can't do that because that's unethical for us to do.
Generally, we have to identify ourselves as attorneys before we speak to anybody involved in a case or litigation that we're involved in.
Interesting. All right. Well, I hope you guys are taking notes. It's always good to learn from y'all. And coming up after the break, we're going to be talking about, of course, traffic stops and the do's and don'ts. It wouldn't be a beach injury lawyer segment without talking about traffic, right, guys?
That's right.
All right. Stick with us, everyone.
We'll be back right after this break with more Living Local Carolina.
Well, thanks for sticking with us today on Living Local Carolina. I've been hanging out with the guys from Beach Injury Lawyers. We talked about all kinds of stuff, and now we're going to be talking about safety on the road and stop and ID. What's that?
Stop an ID. In some states, police are allowed to come up to you and ask for your identification. Just regardless if you've done something wrong or you haven't done anything wrong, then they can come up and ask you for your ID. South Carolina is not one of those states.
Okay.
So a police officer, in order to get your identification, they have to have reasonable, articulable suspicion that criminal activity is taking place. Now,
Okay.
if you're stopped for a traffic stop, they of course can ask for your ID. But again, if you're just standing on the sidewalk, you may look a little suspicious. I get that all the time. But that you just can't, police just can't walk up and ask you for your ID. So that's what it means to be a stop and ID state, which South Carolina is not.
This may go without saying, but if they pull you over, they already have to have a reason to pull you over. Thus, they already have suspicion that
Yeah.
criminal activity is afoot.
So what are some of those things that would lead a police officer to actually search your car or take further action?
I'm pulling my cheat sheet out. So
Do it.
Well, to pull you over, you have to have committed some sort of traffic violation, whether it's speeding or improper lane change or anything of that nature. So you have to present your ID, and of course you would be asked to present your registration as well as proof of car insurance to the officer. Now, where it gets a little more confusing is, so once you're pulled over on a traffic stop, can the officer ask to search your car? Absolutely, they can ask.
Yeah.
But guess what? You don't have to say yes. Which goes in, we'd made a list of traffic stops, do's and don'ts. So,
Okay.
well,
Let's see
so
what
in
you
order
got.
to, so if you don't want a police officer to search your car and they ask you, you can say politely, no, I don't want you to do that. So again, the officer has to have reasonable suspicion that your vehicle contains evidence of a crime or a gun or something of that nature. So the officer has to be able to state the basis of that opinion. Otherwise, it's an unlawful search.
It's as easiest as plain view.
Okay. Yeah. That makes
Well, I mean, it's been a minute since I've done criminal law, but one of my clients got pulled over and he had a rather large marijuana cigarette behind his ear. And so that is a great example of the plain view doctrine that he had illegal narcotics on him because he had it behind his ear.
could not be in more plain view.
Could not be in more
know?
plain view. That's true.
All right.
So, in terms of do's and don'ts, one thing, and I've always told my children this: save your arguments for court.
Yeah.
Having an argument on the side of the road and trying to prove your innocence to an officer at the time that you're stopped, that just doesn't get you very far.
Mm-hmm.
Save it for court.
Side of the road test, field sobriety test. Should you take those? Well, I mean, if you decline, and you have the right to decline, you will lose your license. It will be suspended. However, you do have the right to ask for or request an administrative hearing before a law judge to reinstate the privilege to drive. So
Okay.
I think a lot of people think that if you refuse to do the test that you automatically lose your license for 6 months. That's not true. You generally, honestly, were fairly successful when I did criminal law at getting people their license back. But you do have to request it's a temporary alcohol license. It's not your regular driver's license. I believe there's been some changes in the law where if you're
Well, I mean, there has. I think it's important to the difference between taking the breath test and performing a field sobriety test. So the field sobriety tests are on the side of the road. If the officer believes that you're driving under the influence, they're going to ask you to get out of the car, stand on one foot, say your ABCs backwards, whatever the case may
I
be.
can't do that, by the way. Well, guys, if somebody wants to get in contact with y'all, what's the best way for them to do that?
Give us a call, 843-357-4111.
or www.beachinjurylawyers.com.
The preceding portion of Living Local Carolina is sponsored by Beach Injury Lawyers.